is selling without selling, right?
Exactly.
It's demonstrating his expertise. He knows his stuff. It's almost like case study guide.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. What you can actually do is the complete opposite, and a lot of people don't want to do it because it takes a lot of energy and time, but you have to find the exact companies you want to work with, your dream clients.
I couldn't believe someone would pay me a few $100s to write something.
I know.
It feels like,
right?
Why can't they just write it themselves? It feels surreal. It feels like someone would pay me to do this?
Yeah.
Really? Right? Like I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but they did. Hey, welcome to that episode of the Dan Lok Show. Now, today would be an interesting episode because I'll be talking to a copywriter. Now, as you know, if you're fans of my work, that I teach copywriting, I have a certification program called High Income Copywriter. So I thought to myself, why don't I bring someone who is a working copywriter who has been doing it for now more than 8 years now, right? And someone who is like went from not knowing copywriting to now actually working as a full-time copywriter, what that is like. Someone from Canada, Toronto, a Canadian copywriter. So Carmine, welcome to the Dan Lok Show. We were just chatting a little bit before you jump on. Share with me a little bit of a journey. How did you even get into copywriting in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, like right now I do freelance copywriting, content writing, marketing consultant. Like you said earlier, I've written for Neil Patel, GoDaddy, Marketo, plenty of big companies, and it's been a pretty big journey. But also back in the day, I ran different affiliate companies, e-commerce businesses. And I think like a lot of entrepreneurs, though, it started when I was a kid, during childhood. I just loved selling things, doing the lemonade stands, selling trading cards, and I loved making money. That's where like the heart really came from as an entrepreneur. And then as a teenager, I started learning about internet marketing, web design, freelance writing, and I actually started to do some freelance work when I was a teenager, just for friends and family, and it gave me a taste that you can actually make money on the internet, and that's a real thing. And it was nothing big, but it definitely gave me a good taste. And then it wasn't until I probably graduated high school and I was going into college that I started launching some e-commerce businesses. I had a few fashion companies, one which got featured in GQ magazine for a few issues out of launch, some affiliate businesses, but then freelance writing was always kind of my bread and butter, and I just loved it the most. And then after a while, I kind of put everything on the back burner because I loved copywriting the most and ended up focusing on that the past few years. And but I've been doing it for like 8 years. And I was always reading books, taking courses, reading blog posts. Yeah, just studying as much as I could to get really good. And then after about 8 years, I'm here now, got my own 6-figure business. I'm doing a lot of like C-suite, Forbes, ghostwriting. I'm able to work with really big clients, but that's kind of the journey so far.
I love that. So in the first couple years, what was that like? Like how long it took you to kind of, because I want to give also all the copywriters or want to be copywriters. Yeah. Oh, I can learn copywriting and I can, make all this money 6-figure like overnight and stuff. Like realistically, how long it took you to make enough money you believe, okay, I can make a full-time living doing this. I can pay my bills, right? Like how long that took?
I would say that probably took a good 2 or 3 years. It's not overnight. You're exactly right. Like people aren't going to just like, pick up a course or a book and instantly learn that. It is a bit of a journey and it's a process. But yeah, it definitely took a couple years till I was making some kind of full-time income. It wasn't 6 figures, but it was something I could live off of.
Yes, a few $1,000 a month. It pays the bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And then fast forward, when was the breakthrough in your career that beginner, kind of young copywriter to working with bigger names and bigger companies? When was that breakthrough? And what did you do to create that breakthrough?
Yeah, I think that really happened probably 3 or 4 years ago. That's when I started getting in with like Neil Patel and some of these big companies. And honestly, what it was networking and doing a lot of outreach and, talking with editors and content managers, like the companies that work with those other big brands.
Yes.
And then once you actually get some work, and if you do a really good job, then people just talk about you and you end up getting referrals and you create a really good reputation. So for any copywriters listening, like really focus on delivering value, networking, and getting your name out there and working with the right people, because then people end up just referring you to other big companies.
Is there a particular strategy that you use when you're doing outreach?
Yeah, when I did a lot of outreach, like nowadays, my business definitely sustains mostly through inbound marketing, but but when I was doing outreach, it was definitely cold emailing. but you have to do it correctly because a lot of
Not spammy shit, right? Not like that.
no,
Yeah.
none of the spammy shit. Because what happens is people send out like 300 emails and it's just copy and pasted, and you're gonna get like no open rates, no reply rates, no conversions. But what you can actually do is the complete opposite, and a lot of people don't want to do it because it takes a lot of energy and time. But you have to find the exact companies you want to work with, your dream clients. You have to find the decision makers in those companies, maybe like the VP of marketing, the CMO, some kind of marketing exec, and go straight to the top, and then send them like a really customized outreach message that complements them, and like it's just completely customized to them. It's not copy and pasted. And then if you follow up on a regular basis, like that's actually really, really key. And I've taught that system to people, and they've made up to like 6 figures in a month, like with their agency stuff. Like it's crazy if you put that upfront work in and you actually just be genuine, like how much it actually pays off.
And then what would be the call to action in the email? Do you try to get them just to reply, or do you send them some value driven content? Do you get them on a phone call? Like what's the first call to action you want them to take?
Yeah, it's always good to split test, but I remember when I did it, what worked really well was asking them if they even needed help with content or copy. Just by asking
kind of asking for permission, right?
Yeah, ask for permission, and it just gets a conversation going. Because then if they say yes, you can say, hey, okay, well, here's my Calendly or something like that, and actually get a meeting going. But it's always good just to ask first if they even need help. And so it's kind of like a question and a call to action at the same time.
And what's your style of copywriting in terms of like all 8 years? What are some of the secrets you've learned that has worked for you and for your clients?
In terms of like the actual strategies?
Yeah, actual strategies, yes.
Actual strategies, I would say probably number one is going to be using some kind of sense of urgency. Okay. Because, when you create that fear of missing out, it just makes the customer feel like they're going to miss out on something really, really good unless they take action right now. And ultimately, that's going to increase the conversion rate, the response, some kind of engagement you get. And I think that's really ideal, especially when you have like a limited time offer, like a discount, promotion, or a sale, or when there's limited availability. So that's really good for like maybe events, webinars, something where there's like limited seats. And you could write an ad maybe that focused on the benefits of the event, but then you mentioned, hey, there's only 500 seats, so you better get your spot or you're going to miss out. So urgency has always been a classic, and I think that's a pretty cool part of copywriting and advertising. Kind of like we were talking about before the show. If you go read all the greats, David Ogilvy, Gary
Hopkins,
you can read these guys' material. And you actually study their ads. They just use these strategies that, they worked 50, 60 years ago, and they still work today. Consumer psychology and like advertising psychology hasn't really changed all that much. And urgency is definitely one of the big ones for sure.
And do you, when you work with a client, I know, let's say you worked with Neil Patel, and Neil is known for his long form SEO type content, which they're well done because it's selling without selling, right?
Exactly.
It's demonstrating his expertise. He knows his stuff. It's almost like case study guide.
Right? Definitely.
So when you write something like that, or first of all, how do you write it? That's the first question. Right. And then what kind of research do you do in order to make sure that piece works?
The first step, if you're doing long form SEO content, is definitely going to be an outline, because if you're writing like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words, that can be pretty intimidating for a lot of people. And actually, one of the best ways to speed up the process and make it not intimidating is you actually just make an outline. So you'd map out the intro, the conclusion, every major point, minor point. You might go collect like stats and data and case studies beforehand. And then when you actually go write those 3,000 words, suddenly it actually isn't all that bad. And you don't get writer's block because you know exactly everything you're going to write about A to Z. So that's always the first step. And then in terms of making the long form content really good, I think Anne Handley from Marketing Prompts nailed it in her book. She said that some of the best content is just a mix of utility and empathy. So it's all about making it super practical. And like you said with Neil, one of the things that makes his content so good is that it doesn't just say like, hey, you should do SEO or content marketing. It's like, here's
not fluffy shit. Like it's
no
practical.
Fluffy shit there. It's just, here's how to do it, A to Z, like step-by-step screenshots. So instantly, one way to make any content better on the internet is make it practical. Don't just say do something, actually show them with screenshots and instructions, and also be really empathetic, like understand their pain points and help them overcome that, and give them inspiration, show them real life examples and case studies. But I think if you can hit a good mix of that, you end up just making really epic content that helps people. It ranks in search engines and it just stands out from everything.
And Neil has so many pieces of content that have, well, some of them quite evergreen, right?
Oh yeah.
Even if he talks about SEO strategies from whatever how many years ago, some of the stuff might change, but it's still valid. You can still get a lot of
Oh,
value
for sure.
from that, right? So he spends a whole lot of time. That's good. So for someone, they could hire some, if they cannot write those long form content, they can outsource to someone like yourself
Totally.
to get it done. And what about research? How do you know what topics, like what's the research process that you go through?
Yeah. When it comes to content specifically, if I'm working with a client, then I always ask for their buyer personas and their branding guidelines,
Yes.
their content guidelines, because you want topics that bring the right people to your website.
Yes.
You don't want to just attract anybody.
Yes.
You want somebody that's as close to your ideal client as possible. So for anyone listening, if you're working with a client, always ask for their ICP, their ideal client profile, or buyer persona. This maps out, the demographics, their questions, their pain points. And so that's the first step. And then I can go research topics and SEO keywords around those things. So I just make sure from the get-go, we're actually generating not just a lot of traffic, but high quality traffic. We're getting the right people there. And then I love looking at competitors as well. I think swiping is just a huge part of copywriting and content writing in every way. Right. So go look at the competition. If it's with content, go look at the first page of Google. Who's ranking? Break down every single article. How many words are they writing? How many images? What's the structure? And then always think, how can you make it better? Right? Don't just steal something or copy it, but actually go and make it way better. So definitely the research phase. It's definitely looking at competitors. That's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. And do you specialize in certain industries and sectors and niches, or you kind of go broad?
I'll say most of my work nowadays is going to be with other agencies, like marketing agencies and SaaS companies. But I definitely have dabbled in fashion, health, and tons of different niches. I tend to stick with SaaS and agencies, but if the right project came along, I think I could really help them and it'd be pretty rewarding, then I would definitely take it on.
Yes. And one of the things I teach a lot of the copywriters is agencies are good to work with because they need content constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone runs an agency, they have X amount of clients. They all need Facebook ads. They all need emails. They all need, and an agency, usually they make money by buying traffic. That's where the big money is. They can't buy traffic without copy.
Exactly.
So it's not a difficult sell as long as your work is good, right? As long as you can produce results, they'll keep hiring you. So I think that's a great place to end for any copywriters to start. What advice would you have for, let's say, someone who've just been learning about copywriting? They don't have a lot of confidence. Just kind of think back when you were getting started, a young version of you, not a whole lot of confidence. What could they do? Like, how did they get some gigs going? Like, what could they do to just make some money, right?
If you want to make some money and get the ball rolling, something that I always mention to people, new writers, is you have to go on to the staple fundamental writing freelance job boards. There's like Pro Blogger, Blogging Pro. There's like literally dozens now. Back when I did it, there was just like a few big ones, but now
you can set up an account, get it going.
Yeah, you just set up an account, you upload a resume, and then there's new jobs literally every single day. So if you're on there, or you make a big list of these websites, you can literally be pitching like probably a dozen plus jobs every single day. And a lot of these don't necessarily require you to have like huge experience, as long as you're a good writer. If it's like English first, that's always good too. And then you actually start making some money. And it's all about leverage. So what ends up happening is you get your first few jobs, you make some money, you do a good job, and like you're gonna learn and make mistakes for sure. But you end up getting these portfolio pieces, and then you can leverage those for more clients, and then leverage those for bigger clients. And this is kind of a cycle in that way. But if you're new to freelance writing, and just to get confidence, make that first little bit of money, which is always the best money for sure. Then freelance writing. The first gig's always the best, no matter what. And but freelance writing job boards, those are number one.
Yes, and anyone that's learning, I recommend. Doesn't matter how much that job is. It could be $50, $100, but it's the first validation of all right,
this works.
It works, right? Remember the first gig that I got when I was in my early 20s was like a few $100s. Yeah, and I couldn't believe someone would pay me a few $100s to write something.
I know.
It feels like, why can't they just write it themselves? It feels surreal. It feels like someone would pay me to do this. Really? Right? Like I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but they did.
That's awesome.
Look, in your career, looking back, what are some of the mistakes that you wish you would have avoided?
Yeah, some of the mistakes. I think one would have been not branding myself and not having a website and those kind of business assets earlier on, because without that, you're kind of just blending into the crowd. You're any other freelance writer. yeah, you're a commodity at that point because you're just, maybe you have like your social profiles, but without a website, you don't look as professional. You definitely don't look like a real business. And I mean, nowadays you can spend like $20 a month, maybe get web hosting on Wix,
WordPress.
Weebly. Yeah, WordPress, Squarespace, domain name might run you $15 a year.
Yeah.
So it's really cheap to get a website up. And then also, I don't think it's very good to rely on the networks like Upwork and those places for too long. It's really good when you're just beginning and you want to make some money.
To get your foot in the door.
Totally, yeah. Get your foot in the door, just get your feet wet. But the only problem is that there's kind of a ceiling in terms of like how much you can make, and like, they're always taking a cut and all your eggs in one basket. If like that platform goes down or like, worst case your account got banned or something, then you're all out of everything. So it's always good to eventually make your own website, learn how to do cold outreach, how to do cold calling, sales, email marketing.
You know what's very interesting is I notice a lot of copywriters, well, it's not just copywriting, it's marketing, it's human psychology, it's closing as well, right? I call copywriting actually closing in print.
Yeah.
Closing, it's not just writing. So they are learning all these things and they want to do these things for clients, but very often I notice they are very shy in terms of promoting themselves, doing marketing for themselves. I'm like, how are you going to convince someone you're going to do marketing for them and you can't even
show yourself?
Yeah, you can't even comfortably promote yourself. Oh, I'm introvert. I hide behind my thing. I don't get on the phone. You better get on the phone. You got to close, right?
Yeah.
So 100%. So I like that. I like that. So what about now? Fast forward again, where you are. How do you scale a copywriting business? Do you have any other copywriters working with you a bit? Like, do you have a team?
Yeah, definitely the first step for scaling some kind of copywriting business is definitely building a team and outsourcing, because if you're doing everything, I remember there's a great book, I think it's the E-Myth, and they said that if you don't outsource essentially and like create some kind of team and automation, that you end up just creating a job, not a business, because you're doing everything in the business. So when you build a team, what you can do is like outsource it, and then all that saved time you can actually put into the business, like getting more clients, hiring more, marketing, advertising, or what's really important, you put into yourself too. You can be learning, putting it into your hobbies, friends and family, things outside of work. But like that saved time is huge, and like you're only going to get there by building a team. And then when you have a team, what you can do is actually take on more work, hire more, and it kind of creates that nice self-fulfilling cycle where you can take on more projects and you have the team to fulfill those, and they can hire more as you scale. So that would be the first step if you're going to be scaling up a copywriting agency. And then also automation in general, not just hiring. So you can use something like Zapier.com just to automate little things you do every day, because we're using so many apps and softwares and things like that every single day. And like, they don't take up a lot of time, but they do take up some time. They're kind of redundant. So if you use something like Zapier, you can just connect all the different apps and things you do every day to automate it. To automate it. Maybe like when you publish a blog post, it just automatically goes on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Or if you have a new client, it automatically adds them to Slack and puts them in like a certain channel and onboards them. So you definitely need some kind of automation and building some kind of team for sure. And like, even I do that. I like to take on as much projects as I can myself within reason, without like burning out or anything. But I do have some ghostwriters that I'll outsource things to when I feel like I'm kind of getting a little bit of excess.
What was your pricing model when you were getting started? What's your pricing model today?
Oh yeah, when I first started, it was definitely more on like a per word basis, per hour. And I think that's where a lot of people start. And it's actually good to break away from that, I think, after a while.
Yes.
One, because it kind of creates a bit of a conflict of interest.
Yes.
Like, so if you're doing like per word or per hour, what ends up happening in some cases.
You want to drag on this for as long as possible.
Yeah, right? You want to drag it on, but the client wants to end it early.
Yeah.
They don't want the 3,000 word article if you're charging per word. They want the 1,000, right?
Yes.
So it's always good to start moving away from that and doing more value-based invoicing and billing, and more per project fees. Because then you get to invoice upfront, or maybe even just 50% upfront.
50% upfront.
50% after. But it's all based on the value. Because if you can write somebody a sales letter and it's going to make them like, $100,000, you charge them 10,000 or 5 to 10,000. That's amazing ROI. And you can just charge upfront. And it's more based on the actual value and the return on investment. Yeah. But I definitely started out per word, per hour, like a lot of people did. And then I just eventually simplified it just with like the value-based pricing.
And I noticed even for myself back in the days when I had a strong base of clients, now I'm getting referrals. Now suddenly when you're in demand, The good thing about what we do as a freelancer copywriter, you can change at any time. Last week it's per word, this week is per project.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
no one saying that you cannot do that. Right?
Exactly.
So you can totally do that anytime you kind of test it. But we got to be very good at marketing ourselves. We got to push, we got to spend, allocate a certain amount of time, not just writing, but actually marketing ourselves. It makes a
Totally.
difference, right? When did you switch to more personal brand?
Personal brand, actually, yeah, funny. I had like a web design, digital marketing agency at first for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then it was probably about 4 years ago. And that's actually funny when things really started lifting off when I personally branded myself because
Yeah.
I thought people like to really work with other people. We love
Yes.
working with just
Yeah.
other people and developing relationships. So I ended up
Yes.
launching my own brand, still doing all the same things, but I instantly noticed just better relationships, more organic relationships,
Mm.
longer engagements with my clients. And I think it's amazing because then it kind of opens up to maybe like doing public speaking and
Yes.
different things. You're not just hiding behind a name and a logo. It's actually just you. And kind of
Yes.
like you mentioned earlier, it creates that effect of kind of like responsibility or accountability because it's
Yeah.
all on you. If it's
Yeah.
your name and face, you're definitely not going to be doing a bad job on
Yeah.
projects or
Yeah.
anything, bad because it's all on you.
Yes. And one thing that I did in my career early on, once I created the demand, some clients would come in and they would fit the budget. And I would say, no
Yeah,
problem. It would be this much. This is why it's good to have a little team like junior copywriters. Maybe
totally.
they cannot afford you, but well, I've got a few guys that I've trained, I've worked with. They're not going to be as good, but they don't charge as much. And
Yep.
for some clients, you can just refer those work, and they can still serve those clients, and you make a little bit of money, make a cut.
Hmm.
But then the client's happy. Once they make more money, they could still hire you,
Yes.
right? So or you can do a hybrid as well, where they would write it, but then I would be involved and I would critique, or I would come with a big idea. You can also
Yeah.
charge it that way. So that gives you some leverage and scalability. That's also what I teach. Awesome. What is the one piece of advice for someone who's doing okay? They're making a couple thousand as a copywriter, but
Hmm.
they want to get to that six figure. What would you say to them?
Probably the one thing you have to do is learn to raise your rates. There's actually this one writer I love. His name's Aaron Orendorff, and I think he ended up being the VP, or no, the editor in chief at Shopify Plus. He ended up making like a six-figure copywriting business and then kind of getting into the e-commerce industry. But
Nice.
I remember he said something like, if you're not afraid to tell clients how much you charge, you're not charging enough. So the number one thing I think every writer needs to do, definitely start raising their rates because instantly you're making more and you don't have to actually work as much. So, whatever you charge right now, if you doubled it or even just, upped it 25%, you could actually be making much more and have actually a few less clients. So you're making more, working less. And also it just allows you to grow your income, grow your revenue instantly. It's like literally something you can do right now. And I think that every writer should definitely increase their rates on a regular basis. As you grow your portfolio, as you genuinely become better and more confident in your skills, as you have more testimonials and case studies, it's something that maybe like every year, once a year you could do. Like some kind of set basis, but it's something every writer can do right now. Just
Yes.
start charging more. And often you might raise your rates. You might not raise them for a year or two. You can actually like forget and get comfortable. So something you can do is start raising your rates. And then also the amount you charge changes who you work with. Because if you're just charging 5-10 cents per word and then you go to 50, it's like, okay, you just went from kind of any other blog to like now you're working with like Neil Patel or like a big company that's looking to actually spend quite a bit of money, and then that completely changes your business, who you're networking with, as I mentioned before. But definitely raising your rates, everybody needs to do that.
Yes, and has a lot to do with the confidence, your
Hmm.
competence, your skill sets. But there is never a shortage of clients and opportunities, right?
Yeah, no such thing.
There's no such thing. Digital marketing, social media, companies. What there's a shortage of are good copywriters.
Yes,
There is not enough copywriters, right? People don't believe this, but there's actually a shortage of good copywriters.
I think
There's
so
no
too.
way. There is no way like someone specialized in certain industry, just emails alone, how many emails needs to go out?
Oh yeah.
How many landing pages we need? How many Facebook? And the good thing about social media, they need new content all the time. Ads
Yep.
get fatigue. Landing page, you need a split test.
Hmm.
Emails, you need a refresh. It never stops. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah, I
it's,
remember actually David Ogilvy said something about that when it comes to like getting good clients. He's like, try to work with like the really big companies because you'll never be out of business. They always need the
they
new
always need you
advertisements. They have new products coming out, and then you're just guaranteed work for years. So I think
for
that's a great
years.
part of, like you said, working with agencies and like they're constantly outsourcing to you or like any kind of companies like that, especially in digital marketing, because they're doing social media and the sales letters, emails, all of that. And then
They do
they're
not
getting
want
so
to go
much.
to Upwork and post and
No,
go through that every single time. They don't want it.
no,
They
no.
prefer, hey, I can trust you. You're reliable. You've got the chops. They just
Yep.
keep giving you gigs. You don't need
Hmm.
to sell them. You don't even need to resell them.
Nope. Yeah,
You
just
know,
the results. The
this is
results
just
is what
result.
sells.
You just keep delivering good work, and before you know it, you're fully booked.
Oh yeah, totally.
Before you know it, right? So,
Hmm.
Carmine, for my audience, if they want to get to know you a little bit more, want to get in touch
Yep.
with you, what's the best way to do that?
The best way would probably just come over to my website, carmenmastropierro.com, or you can just connect
Yes,
with me on LinkedIn. And that's probably
on
the best way,
LinkedIn.
coming to my website or LinkedIn for sure.
Awesome, awesome. What's your plan for the next couple of years as a
Next couple
copywriter?
of years, yeah, scaling up more for sure, releasing more digital products. I want to get a lot more like on my own courses out,
Got
maybe
it.
developing some other kind of projects or products rather, more books, growing my team, and definitely getting into public speaking, especially when
Oh,
things are a bit
interesting.
more back to normal and I can actually be at networking events and conferences. But that's what I plan to do in the next few years for sure.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate
Thank you
you.
so
It's
much.
awesome, and I think some of my students or copywriters they will benefit a lot from this interview as well.
Totally. Thank you.
Thank you.